Welcome to an SFB Addict video. SFB Addict here. This is going to be a video on the part 2 of the 3 Romulan versus 2 Federation serial battle, part of the Cadet Campaign that we have going on here. And the first battle ended with the Romulan CLK guessing wrong about whether or not a plasma was pseudo or real, and taking so much damage internally that he actually lost all of his weaponry. And in came the Romulan DDK as the next ship in the battle. And as you can see, it's a much smaller ship, but it actually has a bigger plasma torpedo, but it only has one. But it is a longer range plasma. And the Romulan has the ability to envelop this type of plasma. And that is the positioning of the start of the battle. This is where the Federation ship left off at the last battle. And just a reminder what that ship is. It's a light cruiser plasma variant. It has both plasmas instead of photons and drones and 2 phaser ones, and in the previous battle he used his shuttle as a wild weasel, which is now destroyed. So his shuttle bay is empty. And let's see, I was using the Frax window to track the impulse chart. This isn't turn 5, I think it was actually turn 6, but the label on it's not that big of a deal. Let me just adjust this a little bit. There we go. So the ships that are coming in are speed 4, that's the Federation, I believe. Or sorry, that's the previous speed. The speed's coming in, the Federation ship is now increasing to speed 7, and the Kestrel is coming in at speed 14.
No actions.
No actions.
No actions. No actions. No actions.
No actions. No
No
actions.
actions. No actions.
And as you can see, they're fairly far apart, so it's just a lot of closing
No actions.
for the most of the first turn here.
No actions.
No actions.
And it's interesting that the Romulan is coming in high speed, yet is turning off.
No actions.
No actions.
And by turning off, he's delaying closing. I probably, if I were the Romulan in this case, I probably would have come in as quickly as possible to get to the launch range and then turned off.
No
No
actions.
actions.
No actions. No actions.
No actions. No
No
actions.
actions.
No actions.
No actions.
No actions.
No actions.
No actions.
And that was the end of the turn. So let's see. The Romulan could have been here if he had simply gone straight. Which would have put him range 13 to the Federation ship, which probably would have been better positioning. Anyway, they do their energy allocation. Federation's coming in at speed 10. And remember, the Federation ship here does not have a shuttle to use as a wild weasel. So his best defense is going fast, and as you saw, he was going speed 7 the first turn here, so it would have been to the Romulan's benefit to get in as quickly as possible. And the Romulan has slowed down to speed 8.
No actions.
No actions.
No actions.
Federation players launching a drone.
No actions.
And he should be marking them off on his SSD at this point, but he forgot to.
No actions.
No actions.
No actions.
Now it's interesting here. The Fed launched the drone, and if I were in the Fed's position there, I would have probably launched 2 drones and then immediately had turned away.
No actions. Thinking.
Launching weapon.
And the Fed's now launching a second drone. And it looks like the Romulan is also launching. So the Romulan launched the plasma, the Fed launched a drone. Now the point of launching 2 drones at the same time and then immediately turning off is that instead of being here, the Federation ship could have turned and been here, which probably would have delayed the launching of the Romulan plasma, at least by a few more impulses, which would have given the drones a couple more impulses in which to close to the Romulan ship.
No actions.
No actions. I interchange cloaking device status.
Now, there was no HET who's activating cloak. And of course, that was the other point, was that the Romulan is going to be launching the plasma before he cloaks, and by delaying the launch of the plasma, it's also delaying the launch of the cloak, which means he would be getting closer to the drones, and the drones are more likely to interact with the Romulan, rather than simply the Romulan cloaking and the drones dropping. But anyway, this is actually a fairly good maneuver for the Romulan, where he's going to launch his weapon at distance, and then cloak to drop the seeking weapon return fire of the Fed. And the Fed was actually firing at the point where the Romulan was cloaking, and I forget what he fired, but he fired 1 phaser 1. And he rolled a 6 and completely missed. Let me zoom in here a little bit. So now the Fed's turning off. And what range did the Fed fire at? 9 to 15 bracket. Well, he could have fired that 9 to 15 bracket by turning off earlier. So there was no real reason for him to get to the range he went to fire, unless he was trying to get to range 8 and the plasma scared him off.
No actions.
No actions.
No actions. No actions.
Rom's on +3 of cloak. He'll be cloaked on the last impulse there.
No actions. No actions.
So on the 14th he's
No
+4.
actions.
No actions.
15 he's +5.
No actions.
No actions.
16th Romulan is now cloaked. The plasma torpedo is self-guiding. Drones are not self-guiding. But anyway, at this point the Federation player rolls to retain lock-on, and he needs to roll a 1 to do so, with the calculation between the speed of the Romulan vessel and the range between the Fed and the Romulan. That's what the roll ends up being needed to retain.
No actions.
And he rolled a 2. He needed a 1, so he does not retain lock-on. If he had retained lock-on to the Federation, if the Federation had retained lock-on to the Romulan, then the drones would still be tracking the target. But since he successfully cloaked, the drones now come off the board. And it's energy allocation time again. They were firing on the last impulse. The Federation was firing at the plasma and did 1.5 off the plasma. And now it's energy allocation time. And the Federation at this point is remembering to mark off his drone launches.
Thinking.
Thinking.
Okay, so they're coming in. The Romulans is speed 8, and the Federation is increased to 15.
No actions.
Let me zoom out here. So that has been the movement pattern so far, and that was the Romulans' movement pattern so far. So the Romulan at this point has got no plasma torpedo, and he's basically running to rearm. So this is the first turn of rearming. It's a 3-turn arming cycle.
No actions.
No actions. No actions.
And here the Federation is basically running away from the plasma.
No actions. No actions.
No actions.
No actions.
No actions.
No actions.
No actions.
No actions.
Now the Romulan is turned to give chase to the Fed, and I don't understand why he was doing that. He should actually have kept going to increase the range for the rearming of the plasma.
No actions.
Now here the Federation is trying to scoot around the planet to get the plasma to go after the planet instead of him, but it's unnecessary because of the distance and the speed. It's not going to catch him.
No actions.
No actions.
No actions.
And again, the Romulan is chasing, and I don't understand why he did that. I would have kept the range going to give him more time to rearm. And it's interesting here what the Federation's trying to do. He's trying to get the plasma to hit the atmosphere, which would slow the plasma down.
No
No
actions.
actions.
But when we actually looked up the rule for plasma, apparently plasmas are allowed to actually try and evade from entering atmosphere if the target is not in the atmosphere. At least that was my reading of the rule. The movement here, the Fed into the atmosphere, is a mistake. He's about to undo it. So we determined that the plasma's got enough intelligence to try and avoid atmosphere.
Thinking. No actions.
And that was just a mismovement by the Romulan player on his plasma. That's where he meant to move.
No actions.
the plasma peters out. Now, if the Romulan had not come this direction, he could be over here, which would have given him more time to rearm the plasma.
No actions.
Okay, the Fed ship is coming in again, 15. And the Romulan here is speed 8, I believe.
No actions.
Yep, the Romulan is speed 8. So, again, I don't understand what the Romulan is thinking of at this point. This is the second turn of arming. He just needs to get to the end of this turn, and then the plasma is available. So, if maybe he was assuming the Federation would slow down and be coming in around mid-speed, maybe, and the two of them together would end somewhere around here, maybe. I don't know. But as a Romulan player, I would have been much better off being over here and content to go a slower speed with the extra distance.
No actions.
And now the Romulan's turning off, which is the better strategy, considering the speed differences. But again, it would have been better off for him not to have gotten that close to begin with.
No
No
actions.
actions.
On this turn, I switched to using the other method of doing the impulse calls using the built-in speed caller. This one. Because there's two ways of doing it. Let me move the map down a little bit. And here I'll zoom in a bit.
No actions.
And that was the end of the turn. And the Romulan was decloaking that turn. Since they were so far apart, we just simply called 4 to 6 to 8 impulses at a time to zip the ships along, since they were nowhere. The Rom was cloaked, and there was not going to be any engagement until the Romulan came out. And after this, I think I switched back to using the regular graphic speed caller. So now at the top of this turn, the Romulan's plasma is armed, but you notice that he's not in a position to have it facing the Federation. It would have been better if he, instead of doing this hook, had simply gone this direction and then turned to face the Fed, so that the weapon would be facing him at the beginning of the turn. I think the Federation is coming in at 15, and the Romulan is again coming in at speed 8, I think.
No actions.
It's a little bit slow from what I would have done in this situation. As the Romulan, I would have tried to go higher in speed, but he is, excuse me, hiccuping. He is flying a slow-moving ship. So he's paying 3 points to arm the plasma. And He's going speed 8, which means he's paying 4 for movement, which means there's 1, 2, 3, 4 power left for other things. He could be holding a suicide shell. That means he's got like 3 power left over. He might be paying something like 3 points into reinforcement for shields or something. But I would have preferred to come in at a higher speed there. And my apologies if there's any static on the recording for the audio. I need to get a new microphone.
No actions.
No actions.
No actions. No
No
actions.
actions. No action.
No
No
actions.
actions.
Okay, so at this point the Romulan's plasma is now back into arc by that turn. I would be immediately launching at this point, and then side-slipping and then turning back away to run.
Launching weapon. Thinking.
Thinking. No actions.
There we go, there's the Romulan launch.
Thinking.
Open fire window.
Federation is firing. 2 phaser 1s at the Romulan. Range is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I would have held the phasers. He's so close to range 8. He could have tried for range 8. Would have been better. But then again, it is a left side, right side phaser 1, so firing here, if that was his intention, was to get as close as possible and then fire phasers, maybe, and then start running from the plasma. But his movement here after this, well, you'll see. He fires 2 phasers and does 4 points of damage to the number 2 shield. So there's no reinforcement there. Fed side slips. I don't understand why he's keeping his front towards the Romulan at this point. His plasma weapons have an arc of forward portion. FP, which is this diagram right here. So he could easily turn his ship up and still have his plasmas arcing towards the enemy, and giving him the ability to then side slip away from the plasma depending on what his plan of action is. Again, he fired his 2 phasers outside of range 8, and what's the range now? Range 9. And
No actions.
No actions.
now the range is 8.
No
Thinking.
actions. Launching weapon.
Okay, so the Fed is now launching his plasma. He could have done the same launch here, and the plasma would have moved to here, and then here, by the time the Fed could have turned and gone here, and then side slipped here.
Launching weapon.
No actions.
And now the Fed is turning off. So if he had, instead of side slipping here, he'd gone forward, slip, then he could have turned and been here. So he could be 1, 2, 3 farther away from the plasmas.
No
No
actions.
actions.
No actions.
No actions.
And again, here he's still maintaining distance with the Romulan, which is actually keeping him closer to the plasma, where he could have been farther away.
No actions. Thinking.
and now he's turning away. And I just didn't understand the reasoning for that, since he had already fired his phasers.
Thinking.
Change cloaking device status.
Okay, Romulan is now cloaking.
No actions.
No actions. No actions.
No actions.
+4 on the cloak.
No actions.
+5 on the cloak. Plasmas are right behind him, and there are 2 plasmas here. So he's not fully cloaked. He will be fully cloaked on Impulse 1, but on the cloak device activation stage. So on movement on Impulse 1, he is not yet cloaked, which means he does not have the benefit of the cloak when the plasmas move into the hex that he is in. He waited too long to activate his cloaking device.
Thinking.
But it is energy allocation stage, so he could crash dump as much power as he has into reinforcing his number 4 shield. He could also go speed 0 and do a tactical maneuver to bring a better shield to bear, maybe, or perform an AGT.
No actions.
Okay, the Romulan chose to come in speed 12. And he got hit. 1 plasma was real, 1 plasma was fake. And here he chose to take a shuttle hit for a weapon hit instead of losing his plasma torpedo, because he did lose his plasma torpedo here on the torp hit. It's a cadet rule. In normal Starfleet battles you don't have that option. But in cadet, since they have so few weapons, if they have a shuttle in the shuttle bay, they can take that shuttle bay hit and the loss of the shuttle in place of the loss of a weapon. But unfortunately he lost 2 phaser 2s and a phaser 3, and actually a plasma torpedo in that exchange of damage. And it's only the existence of the shuttle that gave him back the plasma G. Ships are small, fragile ships, and they don't have very many internals. But anyway, here we have some phaser fire happening. Oh, no, sorry, that wasn't phaser fire. The cloak was fully active at this point, and the Federation was rolling to retain lock-on. Because of the range and the speed of the Romulan, he needed a die roll of a 1 or a 2 to retain lock-on, and he actually rolled a 3. So the Romulan successfully cloaks. Now it's curious that the Romulan has just turned to give chase to the Federation when he's got no phasers and his plasma torpedo has been launched. So this kind of suggests that this plasma is a pseudo or fake plasma torpedo. But then again, that might be a maneuver to try and trick the Federation into thinking exactly that, and turning back up to re-engage and then getting hit with a real plasma.
Cloaking device status.
And the Romulan has decided to come out of cloak. No reason to, he's got no phasers. he does have that plasma on board the ship that is not damaged, which may be the real plasma. Which again, may be another mind game to try and trick the Federation into thinking this is a pseudo, or this may indeed be a pseudo and he's coming out in order to be able to actually use his real plasma.
Thinking.
Launching weapon.
Federation launches a drone. Let me scroll the map up. I'm actually going to zoom in a little.
No actions.
And the Romulan is turning away. Or is he? Or is that a mistaken movement? Let's find out.
No actions.
Yep, the Romulan has turned away.
No actions.
There should actually be a turn marker right there, but oh well.
No actions.
And there should again be another turn marker there.
No actions.
The Federation is firing on this impulse. Fires one phaser 1 at the Romulan. And because the Romulan has turned his rear down, number 4 shield towards the Federation, it's going to be more internal damage. Lost a hull, lost a battery.
No actions. Launch. No actions.
No actions.
Federation launches a plasma. Because the previous 2 plasma, one was real, one was fake, this is the other real.
No
No
actions.
actions. No
No
actions.
actions. No actions.
No
No
actions.
actions.
The Romulan had side-slipped in the wrong direction, just corrected his movement. Now let's scroll the map down a bit. And over a bit.
No actions. Open fire window.
Fed fires another phaser 1 at the Romulan. And misses. At this point, the Romulan consults the cost of repair chart because he's gone an entire turn with internal damage, and he can use continuous repair points to repair a system, and he repairs one of his rear phaser 3s with his 2 points of damage control, or continuous damage repair is what it's called.
No actions.
No actions.
Okay, so we have the Fed coming in at speed 15 and the Romulan coming in at speed 15. The Romulan does not have a lot of weapons, but he does still have most of his power for movement. He's got 6 impulse, which we let him go speed 12, and 6 warp, which will let him go speed 12, and he's got 1 impulse, which will let him go speed 13. So this is actually a mistake here at this point. The ROM should not be 15, he should be 13. But nobody noticed. The point here is that only 1 point of impulse can be used for movement. And when it is used for movement, it's used for 1 hex in total. Even though the movement cost of the ship is half, 1 impulse only moves 1 ship 1 hex, regardless of the size class per turn. So it's actually 6 warp, which would get him up to speed 12, and then the 1 impulse gets him to speed 13. Whereas if it was 6, 7, 8 movement would get him up to speed 15, or actually 7.5, but impulse is not warp. You can only use 1 of it, and it doesn't get divided in half, so a movement mistake there.
No actions.
I'm going to adjust the map again, move out a little bit.
No actions.
No actions.
No actions.
And he again turned the down shield towards the Federation player. At range 8 nonetheless.
No
No
actions.
actions. No actions.
No actions.
No actions.
No actions.
No actions.
The Fed's making a mistake with his plasma here. He's constantly side-slipping it, but it'd be no different than if he had simply turned it and it had gone forward, but it is a mistaken movement. But the end result is the same, so nobody really minded.
No actions.
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 No
No
actions.
actions.
No actions.
And his last impulse.
Launching weapon.
And the plasma, or the Romulan launches the plasma. So the previous plasma was indeed a fake, even though it didn't hit him. This is the real plasma, and the Romulan had traveled the entire turn at his maximum top speed, which would have been 13, not 15, which would have probably allowed the drone to catch him, considering the way he maneuvered. But going a slower speed, he probably would have maneuvered a little bit differently. But sometimes people make mistakes and we don't catch them. But
Launching weapon.
the plasma, or the Fed, was considering launching as well. But there is the ROM plasma. It is real. The Fed was considering launching a drone,
Fire window.
decided not to. Open fire window, fire phaser 1, 2 phaser 1s at the Romulan, and does do damage, but it's on an up shield, and does 2 internals, kills the phaser, kills the transporter. And at this point, the Romulan ship disengages. So let's zoom out and take a look at the movement pattern that happened for the game. So this is where the Federation started. And the Romulan started almost where he ended up, pretty much. He started here. So the Romulan came in, swooped around, turned back up and around. Whereas the Fed ran away from plasma, looped back, came back up, again ran away from plasma, turned back in, and then pursued. Now at this point, the next Romulan ship that would have come in on the board would have been this. Again, it's a small ship, but it would have had a G-torp and 2 phaser 1s. So, again, the Romulan has the ability to envelop his G-torps. So instead of being a 20-point warhead, it's a 40-point warhead, but it damages all the shields. Added to the ability of this ship to cloak, this ship is very viable going up against the plasma ship that the Federation player is playing. But anyway, at this point, the Romulan disengaged and then decided to not engage with the final ship. So all 3 Romulan ships, 2 of the 3 are damaged, but all 3 retreat back to the Romulans' homeworld. And let me bring up the campaign map. So this is the campaign map. So this was a fight for planet J right here. And the 3 ships have disengaged, so they have to go back to the Romulan starbase, which is here. So Federation is in control of planet J. And the next battle to be fought is the battle for planet G. But this time the Federation is outnumbered. It's going to be a Federation heavy cruiser versus a Romulan Old Series heavy cruiser and a Romulan Old Series light cruiser. And those ships will be here's the light cruiser Old Series. Is 2 F-torps, 2 phaser 2s, and a phaser 3. And his heavy cruiser Old Series is an S-torpedo, the biggest plasma in the Cadet game. That's a 30-point warhead, and 2 phaser 1s. And that will be facing off against a Federation heavy cruiser Cadet, which is this ship, 2 photons, 3 phaser 1s, 2 phaser 3s. And again, that is a 30-point plasma. So let's just take a look. That's a 16-point number 1 shield. So if an S-torp hits the strongest shield on the Federation ship, it's still doing about 14 internals. That's a big plasma. And if you were to envelop that plasma S to make it a 60-point plasma, that's 10 points to every shield. That means the 3, 4, and 5 shield, if struck with a full-strength enveloper, would be completely obliterated, and his front shields would be reduced significantly, down to 2 points on the 2 and 6, and 6 points on the number 1. So it is still a very viable fight. And in addition to those weapons, the Romulan player also has the cloaking device. So, the ability to drop tracking until such time as he comes out of cloak. But anyway, that's it for this battle of Starfleet Battles. Hopefully you enjoyed watching it, and have fun playing Starfleet Battles.